Right, I'm going to share my screen and let's have a look at tonight's topic, which is who are we, who do we sell to? Now, before we get stuck into that, I'd like to just go over what I did previously. In other words, what I did last week. We looked at defining your products and we came up with this diagram, which we built with ideas and thoughts. And then what we did was we said, okay, let's choose one of these things and then write out a sentence of what our product is all about. And we came up with something like this, which we put on a Facebook post header and various other places. Now, so we know what we're selling. And the next thing we need to worry about is actually who are we going to sell to? And who you sell to is not as straightforward as it seems. Now, fairly obviously, when you sell to someone, the best form of sales or marketing strategy is referral. Because if other people recommend you, they tend to get listened to. So how does this work? Let's do the numbers. If you're not getting referrals and you wish to sell 2 products per week, in other words, it's about 100 a year, and you experience an average success rate of 1%, which is normal. In other words, for every 100 people you expose your product to, one of them actually buys from you immediately. Now that word immediately is important. And you market for 200 days a year, and then you need to expose your product to an average of 50 people per day or 10,000 people per year in order to get 100 products sold in a year. So how do we do that? Well, we start off by saying, I've got an advert that leads people to a landing page, which on the landing page I fill out a form. I capture that information on a database. I then put that into my marketing workflow, make the sale, provide support for the customer, ask them for a referral, which leads people to the landing page. Now, there are 2 tools I use for this. The first is HubSpot, and HubSpot actually covers all of these things except for the marketing workflow, which is paid. And then in place of that, there's a free version of a marketing workflow called Funnelytics. So all of the other HubSpot things on these things are free. In other words, the free version of HubSpot covers these things, except for the marketing workflow, which you need to pay for. And unfortunately, HubSpot's quite expensive on even the first level of payment. Now, before we leave this particular page, there are probably some new terms here. For example, landing page, what is that? Well, basically, it's just a web page that actually focuses on one particular product. And then your online form should be part of your landing page. Your online form should come from your database so that when someone fills it in, the information is automatically on your database. You should be able to produce quotes and invoices and all that sort of stuff from the information on your database. You should also utilize your database to support people. And then you can also email them and ask them to refer their friends, associates, and so on. So the process of finding out who you sell to is sort of a process of elimination. In other words, you need to expose yourself to people you believe are your target market, and then you need to filter them out or qualify them so that you find the people who actually want to buy from you. And it does take a bit of practice, it takes a bit of time, and you certainly need the infrastructure to keep track of what's going on. And the reason you need that infrastructure is because if you want to sell the amount of product that is going to make you financially secure in your business, you need to speak to an awful lot of people. And you can lose track of what's going on very, very quickly if you don't keep track of this with the right tools. Now, having said all of that, let's just have a look here. There on HubSpot is the page for the free landing page builder, just to prove to you that it actually exists. These are just copies of those pages. There's the free online form builder. also in HubSpot. HubSpot itself is a database. It is actually a CRM system, and there are a whole bunch of free tools there, and you need to go and have a look at that online. The marketing workflow thingy is what they call marketing automation software. This you have to pay for. But as I said, there is a free alternative, and that free alternative is Funalytics. This demands a little bit of time, effort, and energy to learn how to use properly, but it's a very sophisticated tool. And then you can also, in HubSpot, have quote software, which is free, by the way, invoicing as well. And then in terms of the support, they have what is a customer service software, and there's a free version of that, and it's very sophisticated. And then in terms of the referrals, they've actually got a blog that teaches you how to build a customer referral program. And it's very clever, it's very good. So there's a tremendous amount of useful information and tools available from HubSpot. Now, I'm stopping there because I have chucked an awful lot of information at you. And I think what we need to do is we need to actually look at whether what I've said firstly makes any sense to you. And secondly, I need you to ask questions about that go something along the lines of, does HubSpot really cover all this stuff? Just a comment you made, Linneo, about the fact that there's a lot in HubSpot that you didn't know you could do. What I'm going to do is remind you and other people that on Gig Institute, I don't know if you can see that screen. We're on a Gig Institute page here called Gig and HubSpot and how Gig uses HubSpot. This page is incredibly long. It goes through step by step how to use HubSpot in the Gig environment and deals with all of the stuff I was talking about in this presentation. In fact, it goes way beyond that as well. And at any point in time, if you need some help, there's buttons along here. I need some help. You push that button, and guess what? Up comes a form, and that form is the Legacy Coach support form, and you can say, this is my name, here's my email, and here's my problem. And you send it in, and it actually, we utilize HubSpot to actually collect the tickets and answer your questions. So what we've got on the Gig Hub website, never mind anywhere else, is a very comprehensive HubSpot course. Having said that, if we look at HubSpot itself, HubSpot has a tremendous amount of resources in terms of education. Ebooks, guides, all that sort of stuff. So if we go to the ebooks and guides on HubSpot, and let it just catch up here. There's free business and marketing resources, and it literally has a myriad of topics and content types and all that sort of stuff that you can look at to find out about stuff. So for example, if we say, you know what, I don't know how to define people who buy from me. So here's a topic called buyer persona. You go onto the buyer persona topic, and it opens up a whole bunch of resources and courses on how to do the buyer persona stuff. And there's a lot of stuff here. Now, if you go to make my persona, that's actually a tool that's available on HubSpot. And what it is allows you to actually define who your buyer is. In other words, what do they look like? What are they normally? How old are they? All that sort of stuff. And you can actually build a persona for your buyer so that you know who you're supposed to speak to and therefore how you should speak to them. So there's a tremendous amount of information here, and I'm still talking the free version of HubSpot. I think your fear of free stuff is valid. There is a lot of free stuff on the internet that you need to avoid completely. However, having said that, there's also a tremendous amount of free stuff that is really worth looking at. And I think the way to distinguish between the two is the guys who are giving away good free stuff, it is part of a freemium model. In other words, they have lots of versions of software that are quite expensive sometimes, but they're trying to convince people to use their software by giving a free version. Those are usually good software. But there's also guys who give away free stuff like, you know, or what do they call it? They call it clickbait. I say to you, we'll give you a free ebook on how to grow 6 foot tall. And if you click on that, then, you know, they sort of got your name and email address and they'll start emailing all sorts of nonsense to you. So be careful what you go for in terms of free stuff. Remember that what you're looking at here is SaaS software, software as a service, SaaS. And there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Just answering your question on being scared to explore software. And I have to return a question to you. What's the worst thing that can happen if you make a mistake?
Actually, nothing.
Yeah. You know, what you do is you say, oh, geez, let me do that again. You know, that's about the worst thing that can happen. So please don't be afraid of exploring. And if you mess up, guess what? You start learning. You know, if you get it right the first time, you learn nothing. And that to me is really worrying, that people want to get it right the first time. Now, anyone who gets it right the first time, what the heck are you doing looking at this thing because you didn't need to, because you knew it already? You know, so my approach is a little strange, I think, because an awful lot of corporate guys that I work with, if their staff make a mistake, they want to kill them. Instead of saying, okay, you've been to university, now you know what to do, go do it.
Sorry, Marlene, just to come in there. I think you ask a very valid question. It's not just that it's free stuff, but there's so a lot of stuff on the market. Where do you even start? And you can really get lost in all the free stuff that are not necessary on its own is good, but it's not integrated for a business owner. And I think by having this link with Gig Institute and having a guy like Gavin who does all this research for us, and when he then eventually brings a thing to the market, I can assure you he's personally used it, he's experimented with it against all the other similar free stuff out there in the market, and he's now saving us a tremendous amount of time. So use Gig as a filter, and not just for the software, but also there's a lot of people out there in the market with all sorts of get-rich-quick schemes. And you don't know, they throw big words at you, and you're not trained as a financial advisor, and you don't know what correct questions to ask. So feel free to also throw everything that you're not sure of, throw it to either myself or Gavin, and just ask our opinion on that. And we might even use that as a training course somewhere in the future, just to warn people against some of the scams and the stuff that's out there. But so I think the point I want to make based on the Gig Institute is it is your filter and will save you a heck of a lot of time.
Can I recommend another site to you, Linnea?
Yeah.
There's a site called Alternative 2.
Alternative 2.
Alternative 2. Now, what I usually do is I type in as a URL, Alternative 2 space, and let's put in HubSpot.
Okay.
Okay. What happens then is it comes up with obviously a Google search with all sorts of stuff on it, but usually the first thing after the ads is this Alternative 2.
Yeah.
And if you click on that, what it does is it highlights the software you chose, which is HubSpot. It tells you what it's all about. but then it lists underneath it a long list of software that does similar stuff. And I find that you look at this sort of thing and you can actually go and have a look at, you know, for example, they suggest MailChimp here. Now, it's not a good alternative to HubSpot, but what it does do is allow you to do email marketing for free. You know, and that's when you start finding other softwares, when you start looking for alternatives to good software, you find some really interesting stuff. And then the second place I look is not Google, but YouTube. I find that if you go to YouTube and once YouTube is up, in the search bar within YouTube, you say something like, and let's just get this up. Let's call it CRM systems. It'll put up all sorts of videos that are quite interesting, and some of them are quite short. So it'll say, for example, what's a CRM? And you can go and have a look at that. And it takes you 6 minutes to learn about the thing you're looking for. And then, you know, how to use CRM software, that's 9 minutes. And there's all sorts of things here, like that she chats about, like Aweber, Insightly, MailChimp, and all that sort of stuff. So I find that my best search engine is actually YouTube. And what I look for is educate me about a subject. And they always, the guys who educate you about a subject always recommend really good software. If you decide you're going to start something and you immediately start with these big, massive plans and I'm going to do all sorts of amazing stuff, you're going to burn your fingers badly. And you're going to make a hang of a lot of mistakes on really expensive stuff. The trick is to start with something that if you make a mistake, you can recover. And the point about making mistakes is you learn a hang of a lot when you make mistakes. So the best thing that can happen in your business is you make mistakes early on the cheap stuff. And then you can get more sophisticated. And also, when you do get more sophisticated, you start saying, you know what, I learned this shortcut. Let me use that. Or I learned that the best supplier for bricks is, let me use them. I learned. You're no longer relying on other people's claim to knowledge, which, by the way, very often is wrong. Because they, you know, there's an awful lot of people that'll tell you what to do, but when you actually ask them, have you ever done it? The answer is usually no. So be careful that you, the best counsel you can get is your own counsel. And your own counsel comes from experience. And the best way to get experience is to actually start small, but that doesn't mean you have to stay small. And it also doesn't mean you have to go slowly, because you can go pretty quick when you start small. And you can start small by doing 7 small things at the same time fairly quickly. And it all means that your business starts to work with, and you're gaining the experience, knowledge, and everything you need in order to run your bigger business. Remember when we did the product definition last week, the first part of that product was who's your target market? And again, in the beginning, your target market's a choice. And as time goes on, your target market is who's reacting the best to you. You cannot hope to get your target market right until you start selling. And the second you start selling, you start learning who actually your target market is. So you can't say, I am going to sell to pregnant mothers, and that's the only thing I'm going to concentrate on. Because you'll find that what happens is that maybe that's not the people that actually want your product. It might be the pregnant fathers that want to buy it for the pregnant mothers because it's the only way they can keep them quiet. So therefore you're marketing to the wrong people. And again, I'm being a bit flippant about this, but let me say it again. You cannot hope to get your target market right in the beginning. You can pick a bunch of target markets, start marketing to them, and as you market and as you start selling, you learn what your target market is and what works for them. Arnulf, one of the things I find works in a profession like yours is to actually do, and I know professional people don't like this, but I promise you it works. If you had to say to one of your patients, hey, would you be interested in telling 3 of your mates about the special we're having on whatever thing you're selling a special on at the moment, and in exchange we'll give you a free teeth cleaning. Now, again, it needs to be less crass than that, but essentially don't be afraid of giving away free services when people do bring other patients to you. And it makes for an interesting dynamic in terms of the relationship you develop with your existing patients. Because when they feel that they've contributed to your practice as well, they tend to trust you more, which is a very strange turnaround. So think about that one. Yeah. Karina, one of the things I saw that was very clever, and I saw this in a little town called Paternoster. What they have is a coffee shop as part of the knitting shop. And the guys actually sit and have coffee once a week and then crochet the booties together.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they all show off to each other and they talk about how they did the following stitch and where they learned this and all that sort of stuff. In other words, knitting can be turned into a social occasion, and it doesn't have to be regular. It could be once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month if necessary. And then also have a competition for, you know, who can produce the most booties in a week or the most booties in a month or whatever. So start doing events like that encourage people to participate. It's one way of doing it. Again, I don't know if you've ever heard of partner marketing. And again, this happened in Bryanston. There was a dress shop next to a BMW sales outlet. And what the dress shop did was they printed vouchers that if someone bought a BMW, they could come and get a free scarf at the dress shop.
Yes.
And they literally doubled their client base in about 3 months because they got people walking into their shop and looking around because they had a voucher they could get a free scarf with.
But,
well, again, you know, the trick is do it. And if it works, keep on doing it. And if it doesn't work, stop doing it.
yeah,
And
that's
again,
right.
what have you got to lose? And again, you know, I was asking if there's a park nearby or any of that sort of stuff. Is it possible for you to put a small table and chair or 2 tables and chairs on the pavement? But what about a bench where they can sit and knit? Yeah, who are your next door neighbors as well? Which shops are next to you? Think of the voucher thing and put that in his shop. And, you know, come and get a, I don't know, a sort of wool hat or scarf or something at half price, you know. In other words, cover your costs, don't give it away for free. Do something like that, because what you want to do is promote foot traffic.